Hello, I'm Ed Rabyd, otherwise known as the Rabyd Atheist, a former pastor turned atheist, now compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Feel free to like or dislike the video as you see fit, so feel free to hit those buttons. Feel free to comment below, and I would appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel and hit your notification bell for more content as it is released. You're also free to share my videos as much as you like. The purpose of this channel is educational in regards to atheist and deconversion issues, and politics, philosophy, Bible, theology, and anything else I can think of in relationship to those issues. Today is a video that is driven more by a comment from one of you of the subscribers and the commenters. And in this particular case, it's on a subject I actually know something about because I used to be a very holiness kind of guy when I was in Bible college and things like that. But Aloha Ohana writes this little thing. He says, "Are you going to make a video about the so-called sanctification? As far as I have observed for years, this is really nothing more than suppressing our sin. For example, you sometimes use expletives in your videos. I think everyone, including Christians, wants to use that type of language to express themselves from time to time, but instead they say, 'oh my word,' or some crap like that. I've always seen that as disingenuous. It sounds phony when you talk like that, and it infuriates me. Also, I have seen no evidence of spiritual maturity in any Christian I have ever known. Sanctification, including myself." It gets so much worse. Okay, I'm going to take on this issue of sanctification. Well, let's start with the most immediate problem, which is the central core gospel message is you're a sinner. In the hands of an angry God, you need the grace of Jesus Christ. There's no way that you'll ever be good enough. So now, you have to call on God for salvation. You will never be holy enough. The standard of holiness that's leveled on us is the holy standard of a holy God. There's just no way for any human being to achieve that. And I would argue as an atheist, the reason that is the Bible makes literally being a human being, just being alive, a sin. Okay? I mean, some of the commandments of God, some of the ideas behind sin, like, Jesus talking about lust, that if you've lusted after somebody, you've already committed the sin of adultery in your heart. And it's like, who the hell hasn't ever looked at somebody else and had a sexual desire? There's just no goddamn way. I mean, he goes to anger, okay, and says if you're angry with your brother, you've killed him. Well, Jesus, who doesn't get angry at somebody else? Okay, so being human equals being a sinner, and so there's just no way to escape that. Well, you have this idea, okay, I can get out of this by this redemptive grace. And then once you get saved, okay, you have this other tension where now I'm supposed to pursue being more like Jesus. I'm supposed to pursue sanctification. I'm supposed to pursue holiness. And it creates this psychological tension. And this is something, if people ask me, okay, Ed, why do you talk about deconversion so much? Because this is the crux of the matter of what the psychological bullshit that this kind of theology does to your head. Because you're constantly in this tension of, I'm not good enough. I'll never be good enough. But God can make me good enough. And so when you screw up, like instead of saying, oh my word, you say, oh my God, or damn it, or whatever. Oh, I slipped up. I'm not as holy as I need to be. And it's like, it's not just a question of being disingenuous. For those that are sincerely trying to be holy, this is screwing with somebody's brain, because you're basically, an abusive person will tell you you're not good enough. And then they'll tell you the only reason you are good enough is because of what they've done for you. And then they'll tell you to uphold a certain standard. And when you don't fall up, there you go. You're no good. I want to let you know that that is very much the psychology of what an abuser does to their victim. to somebody who's a psychologically manipulated sociopath, that's exactly what they do to their victim, is tell them they're not good enough, tell them they'll never be good enough without their help, without your help. You help them out, you don't live up to the standard, oh, bam, consequences. And this is this cycle over and over. Well, in the case of religion, in the case of Christianity in particular, you have this, how shall I say it, tension that is deliberately abusive that you create for yourself. You literally create your own abusive mindset because there's no real God. So either the church officials are creating this bullshit by the way they're preaching and teaching, or you're creating it for yourself because this is the idea you have in your head. Now, I'm going to compound it by getting even worse, because I come from a holiness-backed tradition. You know, when Pentecostals and Charismatics, if you go back to Azusa Street, well, Azusa Street has its own roots in the holiness movement that came after the Civil War, okay, where people were trying to be holy, they're trying to be better. And out of that holiness work came the idea of another work of grace that sanctified the believer, that made them even better, that you could, by prayer and fasting and really seeking after God, God could come down and completely change your heart. Not salvation obviously isn't good enough. Okay, getting saved just means grace is in your life. But if you want to get past grace and truly become like Christ, you need the second work of grace called the second blessing, or, you know, sanctification or entire sanctification, depending on the tradition. Now, Wesley and the Methodists were big into this, okay? And that creeped over to the United States, became part of the holiness movement, Charles Finney and all those guys, a bunch of others. This holiness movement, this idea of a second work of grace. And in the late 1800s, it really took off again. And then that became the Pentecostal church. And the Pentecostal churches, a lot of them, like the Church of God, Cleveland, Tennessee, and many of them, even the Assemblies of God, still have this as part of their tenets, this idea of sanctification, this idea of God purifying a person. So what happens in the psychology when supposedly you've had this second work of grace and, well, shit, you say shit. Now what? Now what do? You've literally told everybody your sanctification is useless. Well, it's just a little slip. It's this constant. And now you need to understand. Can you imagine what it's like when you say, okay, I've received salvation. You go to your pastor and you go like, man, I really try to be holy. I don't know what. And the guy comes in and says, well, if you really seek hard, you'll have this experience and God will truly transform you. He'll entirely sanctify you, and you will never be, you'll never have the desire to sin again, ever. And I want to let you know that's kind of a fucked up mind fuck. It really is. I hate to use so many expletives in a single sentence, but that's how strongly I feel about this now and how much I hate it as a doctrine, because I think that there's nothing more damaging to the psychology of a person who's trying to achieve some sort of perfect holiness that's not achievable. And the only reason they think they need to achieve it is a false idea that they're a sinner that needs the grace of Jesus in the first place. And then when they get it, they're never good enough. So somebody comes along and sells them something else called sanctification or entire sanctification. Now what? Now what do? And you pursue this, you think you have it, and then you slip up again. Oh, did I really have that? And you spend all this time looking for this holy perfection, and you never get it. Now, I agree with you. I think a lot of this stuff, a lot of this is disingenuous. Where these Christians are just play acting. They substitute swear words. And quite frankly, to me, it's just Christian cussing, and they might as well just go full Monty. But it's like, I don't get the idea of this notion of sanctification anymore, because the more I look at it, the more I think it's very psychologically damaging. To me, the truest path as a human being is to accept the fact that you're a human being, that you have flaws, you're not a sinner, you're just human. And accepting who you are and what you are is the first step to having more balance. Now, maybe you accept who you are and you say, you know, I could still improve in here and here. I'm not against that at all. In fact, I encourage it. It's just with the whole aspect of God, I'm not pleasing to God. I'm not pleasing to God. I'm not pleasing to God. And then you go after this thing thinking you're going to make yourself pleasing to God, and then it doesn't work out. Then what do? And this becomes a real vicious cycle in Pentecostal holiness type churches. And, you know, even old time Wesleyans, you know, if there's still any true Wesleyan churches out there, they experience this too. And it's like, you just can't get it good enough, and you'll never be good enough. And, you know, the real problem is, how do you measure spiritual maturity? What the hell is it? Okay, Christians will define it as being like Christ, and you know, developing more fruit of the Spirit. I look at that and go, I don't see it. And you're right. Okay, I saw a lot of people that were quote unquote sanctified do a lot of really shitty things to each other. I mean, I'm going to tell you, in your average holiness church, gossip is a big thing. Okay, and gossip is against the commandments of God, but I personally think it's the glue that holds society together now. But, you know, but inside the church, gossip is just bad, particularly in holiness movements, because, oh, they slipped up over there. They're not as holy as they're supposed to be. You know, it's that old song, you know, Squirrel Revival, you know, by, you know, Bertha Better Than Yous are always there, like waiting for you to screw up in such a sanctified holiness. I mean, it's, yeah, I think it's disingenuous at times, but the real sadness is when people are sincere, when they're like legitimately looking for this thing, and it's a complete and utter waste of time. And it's all about having a very bad self-image about yourself put into your place about you because somebody told you you're a sinner and you're not good enough. And the only way to get enough is to accept the grace of Jesus Christ and then pursue the sanctification of the Holy Spirit. And boy, does that screw people up. It makes people totally twisted in the head, you know, because there are some people that get quote unquote entirely sanctified, and then they go out and when they sin, they're like, well, you know, that's not really a sin. I can't sin anymore. I've seen people say this shit. And it's really arrogant and it's really proud, but they never see that because they've been entirely sanctified. And, you know, I don't get that shit anymore. I don't get it. There's just such an arrogance to it that I just don't buy it anymore. But that's kind of my thoughts on the sanctification deal. Just a comment of the day, Ronald Mendonica, from a day ago, I giving thanks to actual people. He says, Rock, I'm glad you're doing better. I was in the hospital. I too was in the hospital. Those workers are really saints. I'm just using this as an example of all the well wishes. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. You know, just, you know, I'm doing much better. I thank you and appreciate that. I'm sorry to hear you, Ronald, that you were in the hospital too. Hope you're doing better. But yeah, when I look at, you know, healthcare workers, yeah, most of them, a good chunk of them are really good people that are really into healing people. And the problem is they work in an industry that's often maligned. And the truth of the matter is, you know, when you get sick, really sick, they're your line of defense. They are what you have. And we really should appreciate them more. I want to thank you, everybody, for stopping by today. I appreciate you all coming by. And, you know, make sure you like, share, subscribe this video. It really helps out the channel when you do that. Every time I have a rash of comments, likes, shares, and subscribes, I usually pick up a lot more followers. So, you know, do what you can, and I appreciate all the help you can give me. And hopefully someday I can convince all of you to be a rabid atheist like myself. In the meantime, this is Rabyd, also known as the Rabid Atheist, signing off and wishing you a good day.